Are string of pearls toxic to cats? I don't own a string of pearls plant myself, but a friend's cat, Luna, got really sick after nibbling on hers. Luna seemed lethargic and wouldn't eat for a day, and then started throwing up. Her meow sounded hoarse too. It was a scary night. Luna's alright now, but that whole experience made me super cautious about houseplants. I did some research after that and found out string of pearls are definitely on the toxic to cats list. Not worth the risk, in my opinion. Maybe I'll stick to cat grass from now on. At least they're supposed to like that. Where to buy string of pearls plant? Finding a string of pearls plant isn't too difficult these days, especially with the popularity of succulents. Personally, I've found them in a variety of places. Local nurseries and garden centers often carry them, and that's where I got my first one. I love browsing through the different varieties and sizes they offer, and the staff are usually knowledgeable and helpful if you have any questions. If you prefer shopping online, there are numerous websites dedicated to selling plants where you can find a string of pearls. I've had success with online plant shops and even found some unique varieties that I hadn't seen in stores. Just make sure to read reviews and check the seller's reputation to ensure you're getting a healthy plant. How to water string of pearls? Watering my string of pearls is all about going with the flow, literally. I learned the hard way that these little guys are drama queens when it comes to overwatering. Now, I wait until the soil is completely dry to the touch, like not even a hint of moisture. Then I drench the pot entirely until water runs out the drainage hole. That way I know all the roots get a good drink. I usually let the pot sit in a dish of water for a few minutes too, just to make sure. After that, I make sure the pot drains completely before putting it back in its usual spot. It seems like a lot of work, but my string of pearls has been thanking me with tons of new growth and those cute little plump pearls. How to repot string of pearls? Repotting my string of pearls can be a bit nerve-wracking because those delicate little pearls seem to pop off at the slightest touch. The last time I repotted, I learned a trick that was a total game changer. Instead of wrestling the whole plant out of its pot, I gently tipped it upside down over a towel or some newspaper. With a little jiggling and coaxing, the whole root ball and pearls slid out together. Then I simply placed it on top of fresh succulent mix in the new pot, filled in the sides carefully, and voila! Less stress for me, less mess, and my string of pearls seems happy as a clam in its new digs. Of course, I did lose a few pearls in the process, but that's a small price to pay for a healthy and thriving plant. Why is my string of pearls dying? Oh no, a sad string of pearls? There are a couple of things that could be making mine unhappy. Without seeing it, it's tough to say for sure, but the two most likely culprits are water and light. If my pearls are shriveling up and look wrinkly, I might be underwatering. Those little guys store water in their leaves so they can bounce back from a dry spell, but if it goes on too long, they'll start to shrivel. On the other hand, if the pearls are squishy or mushy instead of wrinkly, it could be overwatering. String of pearls hate soggy feet, and that can lead to root rot. If the roots are rotten, the plant can't take up water properly, so the leaves get mushy even though the soil is wet. Another clue for overwatering is if the stems themselves look mushy or brown. Light is another big one. String of pearls love bright, indirect sunlight. If mine isn't getting enough light, it might start to stretch out and lose its compact, cascading look. The pearls might also get a bit paler and lose their plumpness. Too much direct sun can scorch the leaves though, so finding that happy medium is key. I think I'll take a good look at my string of pearls and see if I can figure out what's wrong. Maybe with a little adjustment, I can get those pearly boys happy and healthy again. How fast do string of pearls grow? My string of pearls can be a real speed demon when it's happy. In the spring and summer, when it gets plenty of bright, indirect sunlight and I water it just right, it seems to put out new growth like crazy. I'd say it easily grows somewhere between 5 and 15 inches a year. Sometimes I even have to prune it back a bit to keep it from getting too wild. It is a succulent though, so it slows way down in the winter. I barely water it at all during those cold months, and it doesn't seem to grow much at all. But come spring, it wakes right back up and starts spilling over its pot again. I think the key to fast growth is really good drainage and making sure not to overwater it, even when it's growing like gangbusters. Those little pearls might look delicate, but they pack a punch when it comes to new growth. How to make string of pearls fuller? There are a couple of tricks I've learned to make my string of pearls fuller and overflowing with those cute little pearls. The first is all about propagation. These guys are super easy to propagate from stem cuttings. I take a healthy strand that's a bit leggy and simply snip off a section with a few nodes, those little bumps where the leaves grow. Then I can plant the cuttings directly in well-draining soil, or even water propagate them in a glass of water. Before long, I have new little string of pearls babies that I can tuck back into the main pot to fill it out. Another trick is pruning. Don't be afraid to give your string of pearls a haircut. Pinching off the top growth encourages branching, which means more strands and a fuller plant overall. I use the trimmings for propagation too, so it's a win-win. Just be careful not to go crazy with the pruning, especially if your plant isn't that big to begin with. You want to encourage growth, not stun it. With a little patience and some strategic pruning, you can coax your string of pearls into a lush, cascading masterpiece. Are string of pearls toxic to dogs? Yes, I learned the hard way that string of pearls plants can be toxic to dogs. A while back, I had a beautiful string of pearls hanging in my living room, and one day, my curious pup decided to take a little nibble. Shortly after, she started showing signs of distress like vomiting and diarrhea. It was a really scary experience seeing her in pain like that. Thankfully, I rushed her to the vet, and they were able to treat her in time. Since then, I've made sure to keep any potentially harmful plants out of her reach to avoid another scare like that. Do string of pearls flower? Yes, string of pearls plants can produce flowers, although it's not as common as with other types of succulents. I remember the first time mine bloomed. It was a pleasant surprise. The tiny white flowers have a delicate beauty that complements the trailing strands of beads perfectly. It happened during the spring when the plant was receiving plenty of sunlight and just the right amount of water. Seeing those little blooms added an extra charm to my already beloved plant, and it made me appreciate it even more. Can string of pearls grow outside? Yes, string of pearls can definitely grow outside, but it depends on the climate and conditions of the area. I've personally seen them thrive outdoors in warmer regions with mild winters and plenty of sunlight. In fact, they can look absolutely stunning cascading over a garden wall or hanging from a porch railing. However, in colder climates or areas with harsh winters, it's best to keep them indoors or in containers that can be brought inside during the colder months to protect them from frost damage. Overall, as long as they get enough sunlight and well-draining soil, they can flourish outdoors and add a unique touch to any garden or patio space.